Evening, open night school board meeting is Monday, May 10th, from 1 to 6 o'clock to 11 board meeting, 7 Mrs. Fisher?
Here.
We'll note that Mr. Begenhart is not here at this time. Mrs. Ingersoll?
Here.
Mr. Martell? Here. Mr. O'Donnell? Here. Mrs. Ray?
Here.
Mr. Scarra?
Here.
Ms. Grotowski?
Here.
Is Mr. Reed gone today? All right. We'll go from continue. Continue with those first day schedules. Do we have any? Everything. Reading that, what are the options? Tricia, the floor is yours.
Hi. Can you hear me okay? I would like to introduce Kristen Monday. She is our options art teacher, and she is just completed her 5th year, I believe, at options. But that's not all she does. She's quite accomplished, and she is also adjunct faculty at the University of Whitewater. So she's here to present about how she has incorporated both of those roles into our program. We are blessed to have her, and she does amazing things. Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Kristen Monday, and I'm the program coordinator for the art education department at UW Whitewater. So I have all the students that are training to become art teachers. And every year, with the exception of, last year, I've at a variety of schools for their final exam, I have them do an arts night at the school. And I don't know, Jason, do you have...
Yeah, you want me to pull up the presentation?
Yeah, because I kind of want to look at what I wrote. So we took some pictures. I think it was 2 weeks ago. So what my students did is they wrote their formal lesson plan, submitted their ideas. They had to make some samples, I always have them for this is the elementary art education methods course. So they have to have a picture book to go with their lesson. So I always have them incorporate literacy into everything they do. They also have to incorporate another content area. So it could be science, social studies, math, writing, something else besides we don't just do art. We have to overlap and weave ourselves throughout all the curriculum. So then they had to do all the preparation, the prep, just as if they were a regular teacher. So I didn't help them. I didn't tell them how many sheets of paper they would need. They had to have their own garbage, their own coverings for the tables. I just sort of said, it has to look like we were never there. So you have to do all the setup, all the cleanup, all the prep, all the planning, everything. But it's just a nice way for me to do a performance assessment because the kids, otherwise they're just sort of writing lesson plans and they don't really go anywhere with them. They're just like these floating lesson plans and they never know if they actually work, or how kids are going to respond or if they're going to be engaged or what kinds of issues happen along the way. So that's kind of my favorite type of exam is where they're still learning during the exam. They're still figuring out how is this all going to work. So these students have not done their field work or student teaching yet. They're all like one semester before field, and then the final semester they'll be student teaching. So this is one of their first opportunities with actual children and their own lessons. A lot of times they're teaching other people's lessons if they're working in other art rooms. So I like to have them see what they can do and carry the whole thing out from beginning to end. And then I just sort of like walk around and facilitate and talk with parents. But it's really a great event because it's just a win-win all the way around. As part of the university budget for their course, the university is basically providing all the materials. So the students have that in the classroom, all the stuff that they're using to prepare. And then they bring that all in, and we just send out an invite to the students. And then as the differentiation part, I just sort of tell them they kind of have a grade level focus for their lesson. So it might be in real life, it might be for like a 3rd grade classroom, but I tell them you might have 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds all the way up through high school. So, and it kind of shows them like, I mean, there's huge gaps in regular classrooms that, you might have a student that's reading like a picture book and another student that's reading Harry Potter, and so I want them to sort of see like you could have kids that are very, very different ability levels in the same classroom. So I just have them treat the grade levels that way. So they have to kind of have ideas for, well, if a 4-year-old comes up, how will I make adjustments to help them with cutting? Or if a high schooler comes up to my table, how will I make it, more difficult or challenging, or give them different alternatives to the regular project? So they kind of have to figure it out as they go, just like a teacher would. So, and then the next week, so this would have been 2 weeks ago, then last Tuesday, we came back together and just had like, I give them like a reflection assignment that they have to kind of reflect on what happened that night, how it went, I call them precious moments. Like if they had little precious moments, like what would they do differently if they were going to do the lesson again? And they had such a wonderful experience, and it happens every year. They're like, this is the best final exam ever. I'm like, right? I know. So, and the parents, the options parents, were just thrilled that they, had this opportunity that was totally free for the kids. We did it kind of in an open house style so they could come and go. I think I had 6 students this year. So there were 6 different tables with 6 different projects, and the kids could sort of come and go however they wanted. They could pick the project they wanted. Some kids stayed at one table the whole time and did like really, really detailed work. Some, wanted to make sure they got to everything. But yeah, it was really great. And I'm excited to continue to do that every spring, because this class meets every spring. And then my high school, my secondary art methods class is a fall class, and we do something a little different for their final. But anyways, I don't know if anyone has any questions or.
Kristen, how many students do you think attended last week, Tuesday?
I would say at least 50.
Yeah, it was a good turnout.
Yeah, it was a good turnout. And I think it would have been more, there is like, the COVID issue, so that may or may not have, but then this year I didn't do as great a job of advertising. It was just a weird year. It got really hectic and things, and I don't know. So, but I think we didn't do a bad job at advertising. I just think normally
still a good turnout.
Posters. Yeah, it really was. And the kids had so much fun. And yeah, they were just thrilled. I mean, it was just like Happyville everywhere. The parents were thrilled. The kids were happy. My students were loving finally having actual human beings. And there's just things that you cannot teach in the classroom without kids. Like one of my examples is one of the girls had brought solo cups for water cups, And I knew ahead of time, I knew what was going to happen, but she hadn't had enough experience that wasn't a good idea. And right away they were like, the water, they were tipping over, I mean, I knew she needed like a bowl for water, but I just like let her do her thing. And she figured it out. And then next time she'll know, and I don't downgrade them for that. I kind of want them to have those little experiences, but there's stuff that they just haven't done before and they don't realize. And I like them. You just have to live it in order to learn. So I'd rather have them learn that way. I just think it's a lot more effective than me sitting there saying, you need bowls, not water. You need this, not this. You need, it's just, I don't like yapping. At them, I like to have them have the actual experience and figure it out for themselves. So there's a lot of advantages into doing an exam this way rather than like a multiple choice or something. I just don't think is effective for this. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and letting my kids come. I still call them kids, even though they're adults. They're all my kids.
I would just reiterate that it's really win-win. Our students and families enjoy it so much. And I think it's also a great opportunity for university students to see an alternative educational setting as well, not your traditional school. So it's always a great opportunity to show them that there are other types of settings out there that they might teach in. So thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Very much. Yeah. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Alright, so I'll be doing the host of the presentation today. Might as well if I'm here, right? Yeah. So, in early April, Ultimate Hosta was given the opportunity to attend the Wisconsin Hosta State Leadership Conference. So this year it's obviously virtual, but although it being virtual, we still had the opportunity to go to like journal sessions and listen to speakers, like attend educational workshops that were really fun. And of course, we got to compete, which is really the main theme of the conference. So obviously competition was also virtual. Most of our students either had an online test or they would have an online test followed up by a virtual competition where they're like in a room with a judge, a breakout room with a judge, doing their skill or like reading their script or giving their presentation, whatever it may be. And so from the results of that competition, we are proud to announce that we had 29 people qualified for the International Leadership Conference. So this International Leadership Conference is in late June, and it would be in Disney World if it wasn't a COVID year, but it's going to be virtual, again, with all those really cool opportunities to listen to speakers and go to workshops and things like that. And 29 people is the most in Wisconsin by a lot, so a little humble brag there. So we kind of make it look easy, is what Ms. Nike always says, because I guess our standard of excellence is much higher than most schools. Like, we had a lot of kids freaking out, saying, oh my God, I don't think I studied enough, blah, blah, and they got first in their events, just because like their idea of not studying enough is much more studying than most other schools. So we are just proud to kind of keep that legacy going. And if you want to go through the entire presentation, you definitely can. Ms. Nike kind of advised against it because there's a lot of people. There's 29 people that we have to go through. So you can definitely read at your leisure if you want to find out more about the kids that qualified for everything. So yeah, and a lot of them qualified in their competitive event, but also qualified in, say, Robert James Service Awards. So they got X amount of service hours, and they're also qualifying to be an international qualifier in that service award as well.
I appreciated on Facebook where they highlighted the students that and what they've accomplished. And it's a quick little way to look at it, but it blows me away how much your group is able to perform and make out.
Thank you, we appreciate that. And it's really all Miss Nike. Like, Miss Nike gives us those opportunities and those research degrees. So I really want to attribute a lot of it. That's true. Yes, absolutely. But just Miss Nike. Yes, of course.
What we do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. From that big long line of us. Yeah.
And clean.
Yeah. So any other questions for me? Otherwise, yeah, feel free to go through and there's some really cool kids if you want to check out what they've accomplished. So.
Great work. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
excellent. What?
How was it for you?
Oh, it was a great experience. Actually, the installation ceremony for the new Seattle team was last night. So as of today, I'm officially not. Oh my God, I know it's so weird. It's so weird, but yeah, it was really great. And the state leadership conference was virtual, but we all got to get together as an executive council and to film it, things like that. So that was the first time that I'd seen most of those kids in person, and it was incredible. It was so much fun. Like we met up for like 2 days in person, but it felt like we had known each other for a year, so it was great.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming back. So this year's in the Ag department, there have been a lot of great things happening. It's been exciting to do a lot of different things, a lot of new opportunities. Coming to you tonight is that I know we kind of talked about introducing the school forest concept, and I know you've seen this image before, and I know we briefly mentioned the field concept. If you've been paying attention, obviously it's been pretty dry, and so getting into fields happened a little bit earlier and faster than I was mentally planning for. So we did run into the questions that how do we use this space, and how do we go through and access this and start putting some work into this space. So over the last 4 weeks or so, I've been trying to look at how do we look at that. We wanted to incorporate a little bit of some more traditional agronomy, so some crop production components. Had a family that I didn't ask the right questions. I said, hey, yeah, they some help still the land and plant it. But then as soon as I said that we were looking to plant it partially in soybeans, then Don, me, dairy farmers, Mark raising soybeans. So that was kind of a aha moment. So we do have a different family, LC Acres, which is a cook family which owns the adjoining land. They did offer to plant that field in soybeans for us. They actually kind of changed because they were originally planting corn in their neighboring property, but they're changing up that whole field for that concept. But they did offer to till and plant that field, 2/3 of the field in soybeans, so we can use it from an educational perspective as we go through that. And we did talk about what does that look like in terms of taking on financial responsibilities and liabilities. And as we talked more and more, is that became probably more clear, especially since we're on a short timeline, is they were willing to assume all of the expenses on the front end of investment, seed, fertilizer, as well as crop insurance, and do those types of items. And so we kind of reached a point where we thought it made more sense for them to, in a sense, rent the land from us as a district, so that they will, in a sense, own the crops as well. But we will get access to that 2/3 of the field for educational perspectives this spring, this summer, as well as next fall. So bottom line, we wanted to get it in use. We wanted to get that land in utilization as we can go through that. So what they've done is that since it is a rental, and it is school district property, we need to come to you and ask permission that it's okay that we rent. That's a little more than 2 acres. We talk about looking at rental rates. It's probably lower than what a rental rate is, but the land is marginal. If you've ever been out there, it has some water issues that go with that. And plus, that they are being very generous, allowing us to share some of the production concepts and those items and less in there and use them. So it's probably a little lighter than what a traditional rental fee would be, but for what they were offering us with access to resources, I thought that would be great. So we tentatively agreed on looking at $325 for the growing season that they would pay Elk Primary School District. And I put on there is that if it's okay to use the board, we would then potentially like OCFA, then we use that to help support some of the additional tools and equipment that we might use to help manage that. They put in the district coffers, that's fine too, but I guess those are some things that we are looking for you guys to consider. So from tonight, we are looking to board approval to rent that approximately 2.4 acres we're starting to use the word school farm. My students are liking that term. So the Options Campus Farm Field, LC Acres, for the 2021 school year. We got the rental agreement with these that they're assuming all responsibilities. They own the crop, they own all of them. They're just giving us some of the opportunities to use it from an education. It's great.
So the students would be involved in planting.
So more of this point of view, more of the students will be available to just be able to see, just because it's still there, but at least be there, during different times of the season. We'll be able to talk about what's happening, if it's crop scouting or when it gets to be harvest time, because it's many of our students, even though we think we live in a small rural community, none of our students who have any experience that is fun. So we want to get them just get up close and be part of that process.
Okay, the reason we split it like we did?
Okay, because the part that's highlighted in white there is the part that is going to be rented. The other third, which is to the east there, we are students actually tomorrow night. We're going to have our first work night there. We're going to be putting that into some assorted crops, more garden type crops. So the students are working on crops like sweet corn, some ornamental corn, cucumbers, and so some stuff that we will also get to being able to produce some stuff there throughout the course of the summer as well.
And we have equipment.
We have some equipment. So we still have we have a tractor, and we do have a 3-point hitch rototiller that we'll be using for some of the initial stuff. We do have some limited equipment that we have for the ag department as well. We told students that come around if they can bring some of those other extra hand tools to get there. But that is part of the process that we are looking down the road. Now, speaking of equipment, just actually this afternoon, this is a family. There is a family that is very interested in, I don't have this, it's just more FYI, but we have a strong lead on the family that's wanting to donate a 6-row corn and beet planter that we have been used down the road. Other question marks about where we store those things coming with it, but it's very generous operation. It's a very good quality used piece of machinery.
I was just trying to figure out how you split it. And it can only take so much to.
Right. Yeah. So that third that's there is really more designed to kind of say how much do we want to bite off? Well, what I would think eventually, well, it depends on how things go. Down the road, I would see is that if we do get our own equipment where we have easier access, that we would love to be able to do some ground test plots. I think we can pretty easily get seed companies, dealerships where we can get access to seed and that process really turn that into a full-fledged comparison. So rather than just students just saying, well, it's a field of soybeans or it's a field of corn, but now they can start saying, okay, well, if you look at these 12 rows, these are this variety, and then you got a similar variety next door. And then they can get to that point of they're looking at comparisons and analyzing stuff.
I know we're here to listen, but you know, to speak to.
Oh, yeah.
Looking down the road, developing programs and things that portion that you're using for a student crop garden. Just thinking, as I was looking at earlier, community garden, that you have some students that are kind of supervisors for our community, teach them how to plant their vegetables and monitor the vegetables, and they can kind of supervise that too. Possibly spring forward into something like that.
Yeah, we do have some. We are offering students their own individual garden space ready this summer. We've only had one that's really kind of jumped on it at this point, but we'll see where that goes. And we have talked about the idea of community gardens. Good, bad, or indifferent. I've also visited with other ag programs that have sponsored and coordinated some of the community gardens. There's challenges one way or another. But,
You have to have the continuity with the valley tree or something like that part of it.
Right.
Typically, when you see these community gardens, you have a group or a small group of people who are in charge year-round because of that.
Yeah, so that's on the radar. There's just little things that definitely caused me to think 2 or 3 times.
Oh, absolutely, but I was just thinking as you look forward with the market downtown and stuff that kids can do.
Yeah, the Saturdays on Square, and that's really, the goal is that, for example, that 1/3 acre, that is, on the first slide we tell us that we're working on developing a student farm cooperative, where the students would collaborate and, take, so they're not meeting every Saturday, but they kind of collaborate, take turns, and they would in theory then divvy up the proceeds at the end of the growing season based off the number of hours that they put. The initial part's there. We got about 4 students right now that express more of a consistent interest in this about 1 acre, well, less than 1 acre parcel that's out there.
Say that the streets say school farm.
Yes, yeah, no, it's cool, and it's actually kind of obviously we're starting with this crop, but we are seeing trend of school farms across the state and across other areas. Obviously, Milwaukee has one, but there's some other ones that are building some of those other places as well.
Well, we do need to keep around. Unless there's any other questions.
I move to approve the land rental proposal by Dr. First after moving that money.
So moved and seconded to approve the land rental proposal at Options Virtual Charter School is presented and in addition to return the money from the result to the
Mrs. Fisher.
Yeah.
Mr. Gayheart?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Grakowski?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to bring Shannon up for this. Henry Shannon, or I'll give you that, and then I'll let Shannon give.
All right, I'll go ahead and Shannon, what was it, last summer, Shannon? When you first approached about doing the solar project? And, encouraging the district to look at putting in a project for utilizing solar. And at that time, we felt that perhaps an easier starting point would be one of our locations. We weren't ready to do something on top of roofs and so forth, so we're looking for a different alternative to that. And at that point, Shannon got with Mr. Cruz and started looking at the roof. So I don't want to steal any of the thunder, but I want to put it over to Shannon and thank her for all of her work in putting this together this year. She's cool all the time.
Thank you. So first of all, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Shannon Wolf, and I am a senior at the high school. And this year I've been working on this solar energy project with Mr. Cruz. A lot of help from Mr. Cruz. I'm really glad he contacted me over the summer and asked if I'd be interested in bringing solar to the high school. So yes, I'm super excited about that. After I had him in environmental sustainability last year. Cool. And I'm actually going to go to Uni Platteville next year and I'm going to be studying renewable energy. So this is a great experience for me. And I'm put in the door and get some experience. But, alright, so first on our slides we have supervised agriculture experience. So that's an SAE. These are projects within every single agriculture class. And every student must have 8 hours in for the trimester. So this is my SAE for the whole year this year. We're working on communication, getting everything ready. Obviously, student driven, I've been working at it. We have a few other students that are involved too, and working together. So a little bit about the project. We've definitely come a long ways of learning about solar energy and the applications of it, and just a lot. I've learned a lot, and it helps me a lot going into college because now I know like this is what I want to do. I've learned a lot, and I really like it. So we've been working with industry professionals at Adams Electric. So they are the ones who have put together this proposal for us, and they've been very amazing to work with. They've been really eager to work with us. It's been great. So our partner They've been amazing to work with. They put together this proposal for us. We've also been working with administrators, Mr. Tadmore, Mr. Kiro, and Mr. Keel, meeting and communicating with them throughout the process. Alright, so our proposal, just to sum it all up, I'll just read it. The Elton High School District School Board to approve the installation of a 9.6 kilowatt system at the south end of the two greenhouse buildings running successful grant writing process and capital campaign. So on the picture there, you can kind of see where it would be located. It is a ground mount system. So, and then if you get click on the project proposal, you can see a lot of the specifics of the project. This proposal has a lot of information in it, but these are some of the numbers right here. So, look at the new solar bill. You can kind of compare the numbers. It would be saving us about $150 off of our electric bill every month. But that number right there is off of the whole building, not just the overall, the return on investment, that savings over 25 years would be $45,000 in the long run. So over 25 years, yeah. And then the total cost of the system is $17. We'll get more into financial.
The key on the numbers, it looks, especially when you look at the utility bill, even though the building is separate, and when it was built, it was not isolated as its own separate entity from the high school building. So when putting together the proposal as electric, they need a starting point, and they're, hey, that's great, we'll just come hook up a little monitor and we'll figure out how much it is. But they didn't realize that it was a 400 amp service that came in the building, and that doesn't work on it. So they just used one of the monthly utility bills for the high school building. And so what happens is that this facility or this ground mount system should produce more than what the greenhouse needs, and then it just helps decrease a little bit of the general high school electric usage.
If you want to take a look, there's a bunch of charts comparing how the solar system would affect it.
And they have access to all this, but would you like to share why the location? Because I know there's a lot of thought put into the place.
We've been doing a lot of back and forth for where to place it, and we decided right in front of the greenhouse because it's kind of like out of the way of it.
All the way from what?
Well, there's soccer fields and the sports complex area back there, and yeah, we don't want it to like balls coming over and stuff. And it has to be fenced in, so it just seemed like kind of a good place to kind of. There's already 3 walls around it, so there's one more fence. And I don't think it will interfere with the greenhouse at all. We were kind of wondering about that with the shade. But it would produce the ground mount system, and it would be off the ground. But lower it a little bit, and I think that'll work out just fine. So.
And as a site caveat, then we also do like the visibility of it, because it is going to become part of the natural resource management class. One of the units does deal with renewable energies, and so one is that it becomes very visible to the community. Solar energy is going to continue to be part of the conversation, so it's going to be very visible to the community. We know that there's a lot of traffic that goes in those parking lots, year round and weekends, so it becomes very visible. And then also, yes, it'll be fenced off, but under the guidance supervision, we'll also then be able to use it for classroom instruction as well. It'll be much more community for walking 15 feet.
Alright, so the project expenses on the far left there. So the system would cost $24,000 total, but after incentives, that takes away about $7,000. And we also added on to that $1,000 landscape modification. So if we scroll down a little bit, the total that we would have to, the money we would have to pay is $18,000. Okay, up. To the right a little bit. So these are all of our grants that we've applied for the top 2 already. The solar for good, which $2,600. And they would also donate about $1,500. $2,400. There's also a solar on schools. Grants that would be for $2,400. Elkhorn Sound grant, $1,000, and then Elkhorn Schools Education Foundation grant, which we have $2,600. Leaves us with $5,000 to raise in a fundraiser. So our final goal is to have it at no cost to the school district. And that's not even to mention the return on investment over there, which has the opportunity to pay back a lot and make more money for the district.
So for the grants, Shannon and I worked on the grants. And the neat part is actually Katrina Frazier at Adams Electric. She was all on board, willing to write the grants for us and do those types. But we also wanted to give Shannon an opportunity to be involved in that grant writing process. But the two that we applied for were last week. They're due on Saturday, I believe it was last week or so, somewhere in there, Friday, Saturday. But they are, so we can apply for those. And they have a turnaround date. They're starting to make those decisions by May 15th. So we should hear back on those relatively soon. And then so as you go through that, there's great potential. Even though the two of them are from the same organization, Solar for Good, you can receive both of them. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. So there's a good possibility that it might be both. And Solar on Schools can I put together an application that does focus on, we would be one of the leaders. I think we would be the only school in North County that integrates solar onto their concept and the education piece. So I think we've got there's a pretty good application that we put in front of us. So I'm optimistic that we should be able to get some positive feedback from that moving forward.
So I just have a question. So this would be only hooked to the greenhouse, or is it affecting them?
It will
Is
be
providing energy for this?
It will provide energy for the entire public school building.
It would.
Okay. Yes, because it's all connected.
It'll help. It's more than enough to cover the greenhouse, so the excess will go to the high school. It's not enough to cover the high school.
Yeah.
But it'll reduce the high school.
Reduce. Okay.
It actually works a little bit to our advantage because if the greenhouse was its own electrical entity, any excess would have then potentially been bought back by the utility company, which is fine, but you also have a limit to because if you can only return so much at a higher price. Once you start to overproduce a certain level, the amount that they pay you goes down.
Yeah.
And so in theory, what you're doing is that since we are tapping into the entire building, you're looking at all cost savings. You're not getting paid to produce electricity, but in theory, you should be decreasing the amount you're being charged.
Right. I have one more question, Bill. How much of the high school has been converted to LED lighting?
Probably about 35%.
And what are the plans for that, for converting the rest of the?
We're going to do the pool area this summer.
Okay.
It's actually a pretty feasible project from a feedback standpoint. And then next summer we'll do the rest of the building.
Okay.
And then pretty much we're going to have LED covered.
So, considering that we're converting to LED, that's already going to reduce the usage. I'm just wondering if the projections on payback have taken that into consideration.
Well, it would have actually, basically it's going against the whole usage of our school, which is well above, there's always going to be usage above what this solar capacity, it's definitely a reduction going forward.
And the payback is based off that snapshot time. So they reset them one utility, we set them once utility. That's really
Yeah, that's true.
Our mechanical system is really here.
Okay. Okay.
Not sure.
Got it. Okay.
Has anyone looked into, I'm going to assume you have to have a writer or something like that for solar panels because, you know, it damages a lot easier than the bird building and shit like that. So have we looked into that at all? What that's going to cost?
Is it our renewable? You know, just the box.
Okay.
So,
Oh.
I don't think it's enough.
Okay.
That's a good question on that.
So, and then obviously from a timeline, so one is that if,
The whole array is less expensive than our.
Well, that's not that part, but I just, but sometimes it doesn't matter what the deductible is, they're still getting the excess, and I have no idea what it might cost.
Well, I think it's a good question, I was just
Yeah.
thinking.
But yeah, you're right, Jason. Right.
and so from a timeline, you know, I've got the impression, obviously, you know, we're looking for school board approval to move forward with this process, you know, and obviously we would wait, you know, we would eventually wait to see what that grant process looks like, and we would, you know, come to Mr. Taylor and say, hey, we can start moving forward with that. But it seems very, based on conversations with Adams and Electric, and really envision that this could be something that can very easily be installed by the start of the fall school year. Again, and we've talked multiple times, I think we're optimistic about how the community would consider this and supporting this through donations. And we think that there's an niche market out there that people will really excited to support.
Yeah.
I think the project's a no-brainer, even if the district is funding the full piece, there's a return on investment on it. But I do think that there's the educational value going through the grant writing process and the fundraising. There's
For
a
sure.
desire to do that, so I wouldn't want to
Right.
impede that. But what I would say is if the grants don't go through, I'd, you know, first revisit it and see what we can do from the funding standpoint. And I think, I can't speak for the whole education foundation, but I think they would be happy and willing to support that. And the Elkhorn Fund grant, it's a unique ask, I think they would be supportive.
So could we do like a motion that would approve that, this based on good fundraising and grant writing? Type of thing? Or don't we need to do that?
If we did it as proposed, as presented and modified, and then if they didn't receive the grants, then we can always revisit it for the funding.
Just out of curiosity, like when it snows, how do you deal with that?
Well, we were just thinking about that too. Like another thing with the location, that's another reason that we got the ground mount. If it was on the roof, it would be a lot harder to
Right.
get up there. But
you do, I'm assuming you do have to shovel them off.
Or you can, if you really want to, you can wait for the sun to melt, or sun to melt with the sun. But no, if it's a second snow, there's
Yeah.
definitely another advantage to be out there.
Okay. And yeah, it's probably something you can just.
What's that?
Right, the education.
Yeah. But it is one of those things where we talk about that each, they now have optimizers, and so now when there's an optimizer on each panel that will measure what's coming out of each panel, and it will automatically readjust based on what's there. So if one does have snow on it, it's going to readjust. Our students will have 100% access to always know what kind of build-up production is coming out of that system.
Yeah.
So it will be real-time stuff. And so,
Yeah.
so hey, it snowed last night. Well, look what's happening. Now go out and wipe it off. What
Yeah.
are you you just say yourself, is that worth your time?
Take them out there, read all the while they're cleaning things up.
I just I thought, well, maybe
They
they
just
developed
come out and
something
say,
where
"Oh,
it just
good job."
automatically melts it and it doesn't
Yeah,
stick.
no, they'll still
Okay.
benefit from being stuck up.
Okay.
But again, that's the advantage of being in drama.
Yep, for sure. Yeah,
Thank you.
great job, great job.
We need to approve it.
been moved and seconded to approve the FFA solar proposal as presented.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Wright?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Grukowski?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Thank you for pursuing that, Shannon. That's a wonderful opportunity moving forward.
Yeah.
Stay focused on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Alright, well.
Okay, this is a lengthy handbook.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Hopefully we sent out ahead of time and you had an opportunity to review it. Are there any particular sections that you want me to,
You know, actually, I really do like hearing them all. Parents can have kids and, yeah, I have kids in 3 different buildings, and so, you know, to say, oh, that one, I like hearing it.
there is, yeah, and they only have the one to refer to. So I would reiterate again, I really appreciate Jody taking
Yeah.
Right.
all of this put together. Some of the changes, the first one here, inclusivity of our schools, it reflects our anti-racism policy that we passed as well. You want to have that.
Jason, before you go on, I just had one question.
Yeah.
I'd like to find on that. So, financial establishing, sustaining an equitable community, achieves the school district's equity mission to end the predictive value of race. Blah, 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 blah. What does that mean to end the predictive value? Define that a little bit more for me.
Yeah, that would be making it so that all of our students, regardless of their race, their demographics, would have that access and ability to achieve, whether it be EP classes,
Okay.
co-curriculars, having those same opportunities. So for example, we have staff, I think I've shared this story with you before, a teacher in our building who was told you can't take that AP class
Yes.
because you have to go to the, yeah. So
Yes.
making sure that those barriers are
Okay, so that we're not predicting
Right.
Somebody's outcome based on.
based on their, yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Okay.
you're Hispanic, therefore you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
go
yeah.
to the,
Yep, yep.
you may have been born.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that a little bit better.
No, that's a very good question. Updated with the links to policies. Yeah, feel free to stop me at any point. This has changed a little bit. They wanted to really move the parents out of that mindset of, hey, you
Yes.
don't feel like going to school.
No, I thought that was a great ad.
I know it.
I thought that was a great ad. Was there, can you tell me the reasons behind, I don't think I know, but the reasons behind eliminating under, the dress code, eliminating students should consider the following questions,
Yeah, which page? Right here.
13.
Yeah, you know, I cannot, I know it was something that they went through with the principals, but I couldn't
Okay.
speak to why the principals felt they didn't want that in there.
Some of it's repetitive. Very subjective. And it is very subjective, I agree.
I mean, if there's something that's causing commotion, it doesn't have to be listed in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The teacher or staff will notice and have that as a background.
I think, yeah.
The one thing that kind of jumped out at me was apparel of inappropriate length is not permitted, overly revealing shorts. Again, that's a very subjective term.
It is, it leaves it a lot more open, and to be
Yeah.
frank, it doesn't get, there's a lot of leeway given
Right.
there, but
Right.
when you get into specific measurements, there's very different body types.
Right. And I 100% agree with that.
And I didn't want to get into the principles,
Yeah.
sticking rulers on inseams or.
Yeah, I get that. I just worry. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but I just. I don't know how to
And you're gonna
define
fight that all the
overlay.
time because perspectives are gonna be different.
Yeah.
You know, some parents are gonna say that's not appropriate, others are.
Exactly.
Well, hopefully it will be.
Well, say, since we changed it to this language though, and took out the measurements, we have not had complaints
Okay.
from parents regarding the dress code. We
Okay.
maybe have had some complaints for, I mean, most of the complaints have been bad. There might be a staff member or two who doesn't like, hey, I really think those shorts are really short, but I think it's getting past that. I don't know, I'm curious, Anna, what's your, take on student dress code and how to handle that?
It's really hard. I remember what happened when I was in middle school, and that was a whole other thing to do. And it's
Was
like
it
you
that
said,
long
it's just,
ago?
it's really
It
hard.
was-
I know.
It seems like yesterday.
I know.
I
But like, I know for me, like my arms are so long.
Yes.
Like I would have to wear like Bermuda shorts, and like so
Oh,
I agree with you taking the shorts out of there because I mean it's just so different for everyone.
Yep.
But personally, like I don't really see many people wearing like clothes that would be like disruptive, or I feel like people just kind of don't care what other people wear. And you know people are gonna wear what they want. So there are definitely some girls that like wear very like short tops. And I don't know how teachers handle that. I've never really seen that happen, but I don't know really how
Or midriff is showing,
yeah.
but it clearly states.
But you know, interesting, when you're standing in front of the mirror, it can be right to the baseline. And once you sit down, then it moves. So I can see where that's kind of how you consider things. I mean, it's hard to address that unless it's a big issue. Pretty much.
We struck the line, I know which distracts from the learning atmosphere because of recent case law. That's a really high
Yeah.
standard
Yeah, no kidding.
to legally define or be able to demonstrate legally that it disrupted the learning atmosphere. It's not one student saying, I'm going to do this, that it's team constructs or whatever. So it's, that was stricken. What we typically would do is, to be frank, and what I coach them is, if you have a male who has a really inappropriate outfit on, that usually that's addressed by a male staff, unless the inappropriate outfit is profanity or alcohol type items on the shirts and so forth. But even a kid, there's a case up north that's going through the court right now where a kid was told he had to take off his shirt because it had guns on it and rifles, and it's the school claimed that it created disruption. Of course, we had to include it. So it's personal. Allow them. So unless you're just going to say all shirts must be plain and have no images at all for everyone,
Right.
you're really open.
And everyone's going to hear, let's just all go to school.
Yes.
Yeah. I loved it in El Salvador that everyone was in uniform. Yes, but I won't get off on that rabbit hole. But are there any other questions on this? Is probably an area that we had a lot of discussion and back and forth. And I apologize for some reason I didn't ask the questions on that. We spent a lot of time on this to craft that. Because there were a couple principals that wanted some specifics back in on measurements and other principles that did not.
Yeah.
I remember there was a student that came in the beginning of the year asking about e-legs. Whatever happened with that?
So we asked, actually our former alumni students who were, a number of them were black in color, we asked, is that a religious and or medical need? And they said, their exact words where he's totally playing you. You wear a do-rag to protect your hairstyle. So it looks good. And when you're going to school, that's when you should want to look good. Therefore, you shouldn't be wearing a do-rag to look good for after school. So the resident experts, or not residents here, but we looked at that. We looked at a lot of other policies around the country that have more diverse populations because we wanted to be racially sensitive. And the predominant prevailing opinion was that do-rags weren't appropriate in school as a head covering. Now, if there was a medical need or a religious need, they could do that. If they had a hair issue, they could do that to the doctor. But that's a great question.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. I watch it, and I would say the predominant opinion from the Black community is that they're not appropriate.
Oh, interesting.
That's why we went that direction, not because I was ready to say, just let them wear the do-rag. I don't want to be on news or anything like that.
Exactly.
But really the Black community predominantly says that. Let's see.
Oh, I have another question.
Yes.
On page 20, with the wind time, is middle and high school not having wind time anymore?
They changed the name.
Oh. Got it.
So what's the time called at high school opposite time?
It's student success time.
SST.
Okay. So is that addressed in here at all, or not? It just talks about elementary, and then it strikes all the middle school and high school, but then it doesn't say anything about middle and high school. That's why I was confused. I thought, well, maybe we're not doing that anymore. Page 20.
Yeah, we can add some language.
So add a paragraph, what I need, and then a separate paragraph, student success time.
Oh, yeah, however you want it to read. I just was confused. It looked to me like it was being eliminated.
Were there any other items?
Don't get
All right, we'll make note of that, Joe. We have 31 teachers twice. A lot of this is updated language. As I don't know why we have a need in education to continually evolve and change the programs.
Right.
I don't know. Somebody probably had their feelings like this called response intervention. It's RTI.
years to figure out what it is, right?
Yep, and then it gets changed on you.
Well, at least if it's done online.
Yes. This is a significant modification in that we did modify this to not necessarily have to go through that progressive discipline, and we feel like we're off the bus. Yeah. Right. like a mandatory sentencing.
Yeah, we
is
need to do that.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, that was all.
I know we're gonna address it later, but the class rank and body system, one of my
What
curiosities.
page, Paul?
It's up on like
Yeah. There's
18 or
a,
something, but we're gonna address it later too.
there's a link to it.
So we'll just wait.
Oh, that's the link.
Yeah.
On the bottom, it was adopted 12/11/89, and then revised, updated. I don't know that we keep those dates there, because the lottery system wasn't brought in until 2014. Before that, it was weighted grades.
It was the classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, so do we have to kind of monitor as we do these updates and things,
Yeah.
that when we change the whole criteria of it, it's really not even addressing the same thing.
Yeah, let's look at that one. We'll
Okay.
get to that one.
Okay.
I think that's a
Because
good
yeah,
point.
it was weighted grades before, where it was a 5-point versus a 4-point date. You know, it's played different games, but when it shows those dates, it looks like we've been doing this for a long time. We really haven't. In fact, we're looking at different perspectives right now.
Any other questions on the handbook? And so we did a motion to approve as modified. Or we can table it and bring it back after it's modified. We don't print this entire handbook.
No, I think it's all available.
I think we're fine. We can table it. Okay. So then just no motion. then. Bill, would you like to speak to the contract or?
Sure. This evening, the school board is being asked to consider renewing or extending our transportation contract with Durham School Services. We're currently the 4th year of the 5-year contract. And so last December, we met with the transportation committee and started talking about how we might want to proceed. There's really two options: either enter some negotiations or actually go out to the market and kind of bid process. And typically, you want to avoid being in the last year of your contract to start that discussion, so that's why we started that in December. Our discussion at that time is because of our relationship to Durham and having with the services that we thought the agreements and discussions was the approach. So they authorized Jason and I to have some discussions with the bus company. Met with them a couple of different times, and they came back with the rate proposal, which would represent a 1.7 increase in our rates next year, and then a 3% for the next 4 years. Our current contract next year is 3.5%. Still less than our current contract would stay. As part of that process too, we also did a survey of various schools about what they're paying for bus rates. And although it's kind of hard to do an apples to apple, most are based on a rate per day per bus. But services vary by district and geographic situations vary by district. So it's kind of hard to do that. But we certainly saw we're not the highest and we weren't the lowest. I think the other thing that entered into our discussion too is back in 2016, we did go out to market. We had 4 contractors come forward. Ultimately, Durham was the whole price, and we continued with their bus services. So I think that is probably the reason why we're going forward and looking at the contract. I think probably as we talk to them, the reason they're able to kind of offer a rate reduction, they're looking at their cost, but their bus fleet was in good shape right now. I think their biggest concern, and they share this with us, is the availability of drivers. And that's really independent of who our contractors will be to a certain extent. But it's possible in the future years that they said, depending on how that looks, we have to really approach that again. We've been, I think we have a starting wage of $17 an hour. They're talking $1,000 starting bonus. During the pandemic, they didn't bring your drivers up from Grace Lake and walk to our meetings. However, now those districts are going back in session, so they're struggling again to kind of continue with that. What it'll look like next fall, it's hard to tell.
So there is a provision in the contract that if they need to come back for employee wages because they're really out of market, that they could do that to negotiate, and if we don't come to an agreement, then with 6 months' notice, they could terminate the contract. We felt that that was fair. Originally, it was a 3-month notice, which isn't soon enough. I think the other component that we looked at was that the final year of this contract extension would still be at a lower cost than the second lowest bid 4 years ago.
Correct.
When we did this, so you're looking at almost an 8-year time span.
Right.
And our cost still lower than the second lowest bid 4 years ago. So, but it is an area or a segment that does continue to increase quicker than our revenue increase from the state. So each year makes up a potentially larger share of our budget.
We're pretty stable with our routes. Northern Wisconsin. Yeah, we're routes are so ours are pretty stable.
We don't have a lot of new construction, and the houses stay full.
Currently are, they're contained within what's already there. So they're not.
Number of routes still on the very right.
Correct.
I move to approve Durham School Services transportation contract.
So moving second to approve Durham School Services Transportation Contract.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yeah.
Mr. Gayheart? Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yeah.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Krakowski?
Yes.
Since the two delegate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I skipped the positive. Sorry.
That's actually public.
Let's go back to that. All right.
On an annual basis, the board approves depositories for the school district. So list that same as last year. For that. If they have a couple of scholarship funds and they were in different accounts, there's an out with the scholarship foundation. So U.S. Bank is our main depository. We have an account with Cadea, which is mostly our account that we use for our line of credit. Then our investments accounts is PMA and local government. Investments for school districts is pretty restricted. Investing the bills are two entities that a lot of municipalities.
Questions?
I move to approve the designation of public hospital.
Is there a second? Moving second to approve the designation of public hospitals as presented.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart? Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Krakowski?
Okay. Now let's see.
Drop her again, Barb.
I
I moved to appoint Barb Fish
Oh,
as
Mark.
number 2 delegate.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to approve Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Well, truthfully, right now, with these, they're having a hard time getting, and I don't know if it's because of all on Zoom, people aren't attending meetings. And so we were discussing whether we're at.
This evening, the board's has to consider amending our 2020 budget. All back in October, we budgeted that was still some uncertainty in the level of federal funding we're going to get. About $157,000, but the second and third rounds of funding, the second was kind of off of this, and the third was March. So at that time, we knew we had expenses of about $700,000 and we had $250,000 federal dollars. So technically the difference was going to come from our funding. Since then, we have the legislation that's been approved, and a couple of weeks ago, the DPI released the grant application process. So Mrs. G and I were taking a look at that, and now filed for those $20, basically make us whole in terms of what we already spent. As a result of that, it's nice to have that legislation. Right.
Yeah, no.
I don't think I've ever seen an adjustment go up.
Right.
The revenues.
I know, I looked at that, I'm like, well, this is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
Questions, Mr. Chairman, about that?
You do it every year, Bill.
Yeah.
I don't think we're screwing
Yeah,
over.
please, yeah, as long as it doesn't.
We got school farm.
Yeah. we can live off the land.
School off the land.
That's a good one.
I moved to amend the 2021 budget as presented.
The second,
Second.
move the second to amend the 2020-21 budget. Mrs. Fisher.
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart. Mrs. Ingersoll.
Yes.
Mr. Martell.
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mrs. Ray. Mr. Scarrow.
Yes.
Ms. Grakowski. Hey, we did for minutes.
Wow.
All right, regular session minutes, attached to your agenda, closed session, questions? Comments? Hearing none.
Move to approve minutes.
Is there a second? Was that second right? So Julia? Who's seconded?
Barb. Can we include that? Honestly, you can't vote on the closed session. Do we have to separate them? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is.
Okay.
It's moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 26th. School board meetings. Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart? Yes. Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Stay.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Grakowski? General fund bills, Mr. Chairman.
The general other fund bills this evening covers checks number 142,856 to 142,959. Wire numbers 007 through 015, ACH check numbers 388 through 417, and options renovation wires number 002 to 006, and the combined amount of $990,911.
Questions, Mr. Chairman?
I have just two. on the final snow plowing costs, what were we budgeted for?
We usually budget about $38,000.
Okay, and it was only 11.
Well, but that was just for the last bill.
So where did we come out?
I think we exceeded our budget by about $5,000.
Okay. Well, considering how much snow, that's probably not too bad. Yeah. I know. And then the next question, on the maximum healthcare staffing, is that a monthly cost, or is that like the bill that's represented this time at night?
It's not for, I think, 2 weeks, maybe 3.
Okay.
I think $65 an hour, and
Right.
about 8 hours a day.
Okay. So I guess my question is, how often are we paying?
I think
Is that-
services, Brian?
Yeah.
Rita,
How often, I guess, are we paying?
What if Rita's still on the line? She can-
I'm on the line. I believe we get billed either weekly or bi-weekly. I can look back and let you know, Julia, okay?
That's okay. I just.
This position is just through the end of the year. The contracting with Maxim, correct?
Yes, it's just till the end of the year.
And Rita, is it every day, every school day, or just certain days? I don't
No, she works 5 days a week. She works 40 hours a week.
Okay.
It's you get killed and you have to go for that specialist issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so this was just a temporary situation, right?
For the rest of this year.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
We do, once we expand over the threshold of 35,000 bill on a student, they then become what's called a high cost student, and the state reimburses you. It varies from year to year because there's a pool of money, but up to 90% once beyond that threshold.
Okay.
So some students that we have are either getting transported to a special location, high level needs service. There does become kind of a cap on additional liability in the state.
Okay. All right.
Other questions?
I move to approve the general and other fund bills of May 10th, 2021, check numbers 142-856 to 142-959, wire number 0074 to 015, ACH check numbers 388 to 417, and options renovation wire number 002 to 006, in the combined amount of $990,911.51 as presented.
Moved and seconded to approve the general and other fund bills of May 10th, 2021, checks number 142-856 and 142-959, wire number 0074 to 015, ACH check numbers 388 to 417, and options renovation wire number 002 to 006, in the combined amount of $990,911.51
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Gahan?
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Krakowski?
Last meeting, we did that too, explicitly.
Gary? Yeah.
We're already recording.
Approved. That's
Recording session items.
Yes, it is me. Alright, so at the high school, the annual car show is being held on May 29th. FFA held their plant sale last week. A senior, Scott Roosevelt, won conference champion in advanced math. Skills USA is collecting used shoes to benefit countries devastated by national. At the middle school, 8th grade average students will be reading to kindergartners in a few weeks. So they are working on finding the book that they would like to read them. Last week, the National Junior Honor Society had their induction ceremony, and they recently had their annual book fair. At the Jackson Elementary PTA Walkathon is on May 16th. Staff has worn green on Thursdays for the past few weeks to raise awareness for mental health. Jackson is also having their book fair, where it is buy one book, get one free. At Tibbetts, Miss Beggar's class took a field trip to the high school greenhouse, where Mr. Cruz and FK students taught them about plants. Cruz Woods Raptor Center visited Tibbetts to teach them about large birds and raptors. The chicks in Miss Beggar's class hatched, and each student held one, even if they were a little bit nervous about it. At Westside, students made a YouTube video to celebrate Cinco de Mayo and explain its history. On May 4th, they had a Star Wars dress-up day because of May the 4th UFU. And PTA is holding a fundraiser where they sell tacos inspired by Cinco de Mayo. At the Career College Academy, they are currently enrolling for their next session. Students toured the Beloit Snappers ABC Supply Stadium, where they were able to see many aspects of the construction process, including a 200-ton crane beginning to place 120-foot light poles. They held mock interviews for their students to develop their skills before they begin interviewing for their real careers. And then finally, at Options, the Options 6 through 8 Exploratories class started a horde culture unit and made planters with flowers purchased from the Oakland Area High School greenhouse. The 5th grade STEM class just started building their robots for their final project library activity. PE classes have been enjoying the new climbing wall and have been playing team sports. And the Options community open house will be open this Saturday from 9 to 12 if you would like to stop by and see the renovated building. That's all.
All right.
We're waiting patiently.
We need like a stretch and movement right here. How are you guys doing? All right. So I'm excited to just share some highlights from our EL programming in the district. I know that EL policy that we've just developed is also something that we'll be looking at in a few minutes. So it just makes sense that we put this all together tonight. So highlights from the programming will include just some information on our demographics this year. Staffing, we've had a few changes with staffing, so I'm excited to just introduce those people to you. Just what our programming snapshot looks like, as well as our work with cultural responsitivity in the district. And then I'll just highlight a few things about the policy so that when we get to that point in the agenda, we kind of have a visual to go with all of the words on the paper. So, all right, so this is what you'll see in the policy as far as our definition of an EL learner, why we have an EL program here in the Elkhorn School District. And I have to say that I couldn't be more proud of the efforts of both our EL teachers, all bilingual, our EL paraprofessionals, all bilingual as well as all of our staff members who just work very closely with them to pull off just an amazing program for our students. So when we look at our demographics this year, you'll see that we have presently 169 students enrolled in the program. We look at how many exited the program last year in the far column, how many entered this year. You know, we're just keeping even. It's not like we're growing with more EL students each year, but we're staying very steady. Following when we pulled this data, we do have one newcomer at the high school. Anytime we have a newcomer to the district, that's just a student that's going to require a lot more servicing, more intensive time with a bilingual person, and Sarah Tate and her team are doing a wonderful job. We also have communication out with different families that may have other family members joining next year. So we're just keeping in touch with our families just to see if we can gauge the impact that may have on our program in the future. When we look at last year's graduation rate in the district, we had 96.6% of our students in the district graduate. Of those, 100% of our EL students, 11 last year, graduated.
So going back to your question on the handbook, those are the kind of statistics that we look at to make sure that we're
from an equity standpoint, definitely. This was Brenda Harris, also my assistant, also works with Sarah Bosch. She did a fantastic job just pulling all of this, and she works very closely with our EL program Untitled Chapter as well, providing great oversight when it comes to the access testing as far as that goes, as well as pulling demographics. So each year we also report out on which types of languages our students come in with that's considered their home language. Most of our students you'll see are Spanish speakers, hence
education life. This is just a breakdown of the percentage of EL students at each site, and overall 5% of our students in the district are in the EL program. All right, as far as our EL teachers go, Rosario Manriquez still services Jackson Elementary. We have John Walt predominantly at Westside, but he does oversee the Tibbetts program with our 5 students there. Cheryl Neinfeld's also involved with that as our reading specialist out there. We welcome back Ashley Mew Alexander to the middle school this year, and then Sarah Thate covers both the high school as well as the CCA. These are our building paraprofessionals. Dahlia is solely at Jackson Elementary. Claudia this year, we have split her between Westside Elementary and Jackson just due to our populations there. She has been fantastic in just overseeing our students learning virtually through the options program. She's logged on, works with them here at our district office 2 days a week, has had some face-to-face time with families as well, and she's just jumped in and really kind of handled that need this year. Laura De La Vega has been at our middle school site for a number of years, and then we've welcomed Linda Scaro. She is at the high school. She is doing a fantastic job also as our district translator, translating things like IEPs, all of the communication out, especially last spring we had, and making sure that, you know, every family had accessible information. She translates everything that we need translated into Spanish, so we're grateful for her assistance. She too is covering options students at the upper end, and then we welcomed Amelia Kraber earlier this year too. One person who has shifted is Leticia Molinado is here now at the district office, which is great because in addition to Jason, we have another bilingual speaker here at district office. As far as our Title III funding goes, a portion of that goes toward staffing, also staff development. We work very carefully with CISA 2 and a consortium there provides a lot of EL programming for our EL teachers, a lot of guidance as far as managing Title III, identification of our EL learners, good solid programming. So we work closely with them with a number of meetings each year, and plus it gives us a chance to network with other school districts in regards to what our EL program looks like. We provide just a small amount of student resources from that budget, as well as paying for our bilingual people to interpret. So legally, we have to have people on site for conferences and things like that. But in addition to that, we provide evening programming that's just specific for our EL families. All right, so what EL services does a district need to provide? Basically, the policy that is in front of you tonight talks about, you know, how do we appropriately identify students, educate them, and then what are the transitional services that we also provide when they are able to exit the program? So those are the things that we need to be tight on. And so the next few slides will just kind of walk us through that as well. When it comes to identification, and some of you are familiar with this process as you register students in the district, all families complete what's known as the home language survey. Now, that survey, and it's linked there, we don't need to go to it now, is very specifically delineated by DPI, the questions we need to ask. Based on those responses, we know if we need to move forward in screening a student to make sure that they may or may not have EL needs. So based on the information, then a follow-up screener is given by our EL teachers to determine program eligibility. So Rosario, Enriquez, and John Waltz really keep a close eye on that because a lot of those students enter at the elementary level, especially the 5K level. They'll pull over in August and work with families to even get some of those screeners done before students even come into the building. And then what they're screening for is very similar to the access test where they're looking at their ability with speaking, listening, reading, and writing in the area. So our EL instruction, at times we have teachers and staff that push into the classroom. They'll work with that classroom teacher. Classroom teacher is very aware of what those student goals are, and so they'll collaborate and just offer that in-class support. We also have small group instruction that's going from time to time based on the needs of the students, as well as just that one-to-one assistance, particularly at the high school during that study hall time where students can check in then with their EL team. I can't tell you enough how busy our paraprofessionals are between the sites and covering the number of students they do. They do just a fantastic job building those relationships with students. When you think about a student in the EL program, they're going to be working with those same paraprofessionals and teachers for a number of years. So they do build wonderful relationships with the students. In addition to working with the classroom teachers, I know our EL families have built good relationships with our parents as well. One of the things we do with our students is we do a lot of goal setting also in regards to just developing their English skills in a variety of areas. So similar to what we do with math data, we may take a youngster and talk to them about, here's what your scores were on the access test, here's how you've grown from year to year, what are some things that you would like to grow in, like I want to get better at this, some choices here. So this is one for more of our younger students, and so our teachers sit and we goal set with them. We also then take the access information and team with the classroom teachers in order to get our classroom teachers on the same page as far as here's what the next level of goals are for them, more laid out in teacher lingo, so that they too can then, have fair expectations but high expectations for our EL learners and modifications that can then be made. So, so a typical programming cycle each year is, a student is identified, or we know they're coming in as an EL student. Looking at their access test score, we then determine what level of support is that student going to require. The annual access testing is administered. That was a little bone of contention this year. You may have heard a little bit of uproar because it is a national test. Some school districts who had not ever been back in school, that was one of the first national tests to go into action. And so districts were scrambling. How are we going to get our students here to take the test, because it had to be done on site when they've never been in school? That clearly was not our problem at all this year, but they did shift the testing into February, which means that and ACT testing and forward testing, it just all kind of log jammed. But we're doing just fine on our end, but normally this is a test given at the summer, so that we get the information back and can still utilize it yet in the year. As it stands right now, we're looking at July for this year's information, but we're excited to have the data on our students. So what happens when a student scores a 5 on the access test? When a student scores a 5, then they're able to start exiting the program. Sometimes that's called reclassification. So what we'll do is we'll complete this paperwork here that allows us to exit the student. There's a little line in here that's called the MIP. Sometimes you'll get a student, particularly at the high school level, that's testing between a 4.5 and a 5. And it could have just been, the result of a bad test, but yet they're in 2 AP classes and they're demonstrating really strong English proficiency. There is a way around one test score to use other factors to then have that student exit the program. But of course, the family would be on board, the classroom teachers would be on board, and that's a team decision. So once that's done, this is the transition plan that's put into place. Next slide is page 2. We continue to monitor that student for 2 years following their exiting of the program or exiting of high school. So if we were to see, a child backslide and test scores, designate that, we would certainly regroup and move the student back into the program. More than likely, that student is then exited after that 2-year period. One of our programming goals, again, in regards to cultural responsitivity, has been just providing ongoing education for our EL families. This was a time of, great upheaval for all families. And so making sure that, again, everything was translated for them. They had a firm understanding of, what they needed to do, where they could go to get additional information or resources. Learning changed. In order for them to participate with their child's conference, they needed to be able to understand Google Hangout. And so we ran evening sessions and spaced those out. We had small attendance at each, with our EL team delivering that instruction so parents could support their virtual learners, they could attend the conferences and get on the Google Meets or the Zoom sessions. And so that's been important that their learning curve moves right along with their students. We also offered registration support. Skyward can be a tricky system to use, and so making sure that our EL families have equal access to swim lessons, summer school, all of that. We hold evening sessions even now face-to-face so they can come in and get registered. And then finally, things that you'll find in our policy tonight that I wanted to highlight is that identification process of EL students. Ongoing communication to families is really, really critical. Programming and support services. The highlight of that in the policy is that just because you're an EL student, you're not denied access to any other servicing. You know, if you are EL and receiving EL services, you can still be a tier 3 reader getting additional reading support. EL servicing is not in lieu of, it's always in addition to. So making sure that we have a policy that states that. There's very, critical information about that annual language assessment. Again, that classification and then reclassification or exiting process is just all part of the policy. So that's where we're at. And then hopefully we're just extending an early invitation here. One of the new traditions we've started, but unfortunately we've had to table due to COVID, has been that exit celebration. We've had 2 of those, and then along came COVID that we have not been able to celebrate face-to-face with our families. And due to this year's testing, the results coming so late, we're hoping that in September of 2021, we'll be able to celebrate the progress of our students. This has been extremely motivating, especially for young siblings seeing this. We usually have a turnout of at least 100 people that are there, and it's just such a great evening. Jason, with his bilingual abilities in Spanish, is able to address that family, those families, and it's just fantastic. And then this, in conjunction with the high school's new certification, is we encourage them to continue with their native language and not lose that in this process. So, so it's really exciting to see how this is just all coming together from the K-12 perspective. So as soon as we have a date, we will send you the invitation. Awesome.
Any questions for me? Oh, this morning when I checked, we have 1 current positive case and 3 people quarantined. Infection rates 12. And yeah, we're moving forward. And I did see that Dr. Fauci mentioned over the weekend that he's thinking that the loosening of some face covering restrictions will happen indoors. My guess is they'll probably just be like the vaccinated younger, but I think if things continue to progress and we get to that 70% point in the country, I think that'll be the help. So, well, that's what I have for COVID. I do have a meeting coming up with the county health officials, and we'll see where they're at on their guidance. First reading. Okay. So going to the class rank, and on the policy phase, we went through these. You can feel free to chime in. And to answer your question, Paul, I think because the old policy prior to Lottie was just called class rank, and they didn't, I guess at that time, didn't delineate it as a separate policy, rather than change to the policy. This has just some minor changes in regards to putting in the trimester, and then also wanting to, the significant change to this is wanting to make the rank, we still track it behind the scenes, but the high school counselor's office and administration is seeing a lot of negative social, emotional type impact, mental health impact on the kids, focusing so much on that rank when it's right there at the bottom of the report. The goal in going to the Loudy was to, here's this overarching, there's Loudy, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. and there's pathways to get to each of those recognitions and to actually lessen some of that competition. But class rank's still there, and kids are still going to push for that. This is the last year where the Scholarship Foundation will give scholarship awards based on the class rank, differentiating amounts. With next year's class, anyone in summa cum laude will get the same dollar. There's still, it doesn't change the valedictorian or the salutatorian criteria. We had discussion with that. I think everyone, there was that consensus to continue with that. It just changes the reporting of that class rank, that it's not right there. And also striking that students not having only life points will be ranked for business. What was it? And what was it? Where did we strike that? I think
Because
it
I
was
think
just
once they get to that point, class rate is a good thing.
right.
I mean, class rates when they're higher is used for college applications, but when they're at that level, I don't think they're using it.
It was kind of redundant. Just immediately.
Right.
Were there any other questions on this? I don't know. I mean, Paul brought up the point. Yeah, this goes back to all the way back to 1990 when whenever they implemented it. I don't know. That says no, adopted in 1989. Sure, they had some sort of class rank system before then, but they must have completely redone it to the point. And there really wasn't much change at all. It looks like from 99 to 2000. What's that?
That's what the weighted system.
99? Or the weighted was put in 89?
So
99?
No, there wasn't.
Because when I was in high school, there was no system at all.
Yeah. So I mean, we've had quite a few tweaks to this and so forth, but I would say, and I wasn't here for the weighted system, is that was changed. The last year was the year before I got here. But what we have seen is a lot more participation in the higher level, more rigorous courses, which was one of the goals there. We did have kids who would audit classes, which the audit option is still there, and we did have, it happens once in a while, but it's not very common anymore. But kids previously, they figured out, well, wait a second, if I'm on a weighted system, any class that's not weighted hurts my overall GPA.
Right.
So they would purposely audit courses that they didn't need for credit just to avoid getting that GPA, because you weren't rewarded.
One individual audit music, so they would be the salutatorian, even though the three person knew the game as well. So it's always about the.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's the change in mindset about you're competing against yourself, not competing against others. And I don't know, you just got to keep pushing that because you want to hit that level of the vote, not always comparing yourself to somebody else. I know they're all different.
And that's really what the high school office and the counselors were communicating, that they really wanted the kids selecting courses based on what was best for them.
Right.
And not getting caught up into that overarching pursuit.
Is there a listing of all the classes that can be put into the handbook as well?
On
They have honor points, yeah.
It's on the website,
Yeah.
under the guidance office area.
Or I think it's reference that for parents, as they're looking at what they want to first. At least have it as a thing.
Oh, you're saying to link it into the policy?
Yeah, or into the handbook, or the handbook. So it's,
Let me double check. I thought there was a link in the handbook, but Jody, let's double check the student and parent handbook and make sure that the hyperlink to the school counselor office page that addresses all the courses is included. Any other questions on the classroom and lobby?
And then also accentuate that opportunity with youth apprenticeships, how fast those are becoming. Continue to open up for you.
Yep. And we did modify, I mean, that's probably one of the changes several years ago where they can earn honor points for doing the apprenticeship as well, because that would impact. They'd be a because you have apprenticeship students. So again, another policy that we continue to tweak and adjust a little bit as we're going through this, and this is the facility use guidelines. We wanted to put in a definition of community is defined as operating a school district business and organizations that are for businesses and organizations that are for profit. It was changing this tiered level here. And then non-community outside EASD, because what we found is in our pricing level, even if you're from Elkhorn, you're paying the same as an outside group if you were a for-profit. And we still wanted to give those for-profit entities a community discount as opposed to those who are coming in from outside the community. That's why that language was put in there. And then, let's see if we have the. We also want to modify the cancellation fee. If the reservation is not canceled prior to 72 hours of the event, cancellation fee will not exceed 50% of the reservation costs. John felt, we asked him about the 72 hours, and he felt that there's such a demand that 72 hours is usually sufficient time to get another group in.
I'm going to assume we are going to pursue that if it's like into, extreme weather conditions, something that we just have to handle. So it's more like because they just couldn't.
Right.
Or change.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's why we put in there to give him the discretion.
Right.
Yep, the exhibit for the use of the facilities. Modifying that language to be consistent. Please schedule. So after looking at a comparison of other area regional districts, we have some recommended changes for the pricing structure. High school auditorium, instead of, I think was it $66 or $88 for 3 hours? You want to go to just a flat hourly rate on that. Manager, the auditorium manager fee to make sure that those costs are covered for cover that. Again, going to hourly fees instead of these 3-hour blocks for the museum area. Just moving to a flat $25 an hour for the gyms rather than discounting it after an hour. So tiers 1 through 4, again, that would be local entities, not for profit, $100 an hour. Assuming they don't get the fee waived, but then outside $150. So that tier 5 would be your outside community clubs, not connect clubs, and the 1 through 4 would be the intern. Quite a few updates on that chart. So again, it doesn't make us the most expensive. It doesn't make us the least expensive. It puts us about right in that average.
it's reserved, is it also a contract that's completed, and we have certain individuals that can represent it? So I want to rent one of my representing, just because I reserve it, is there a contract that holds me accountable or the organization, and knowing that the people within it, I could say, I'm doing some football thing or something, but I really have no.
You would have to have an LLC and the proof of insurance.
We have that in the contract.
Yeah. So I mean, you could, anybody can go set up an LLC and get the umbrella insurance, but you'd have to. It's not like
it's covered in
contract. It's not like I could go reserve. Hey, I want to go work with. Do that. I'd have to run it through a company or. Which we really haven't done. I think that's a very good question, Paul, and something I know where my siblings went to high school. The pool was used all the time, the indoor pool for parties and gatherings and things like that. We just never set that up or established that.
So I kind of cut it off before somebody gets into the habit of reserving and backing out.
Let's see. All right. Any other questions on the facility use? Again, these are just first readings. If something comes up, let me know. And then this policy is that Amy introduced and did a wonderful job introducing. I did ask if it could be any shorter. And it's a federal boilerplate language. I know it's a new policy there, but it's required in federal law. So all of this is really, I mean, it's not just boilerplate. I don't want to minimize the work that they did in putting this together, but they had to go through and make sure that every component that was required by the feds in order to receive the title funds were included. So rather than read through the 6-page, I encourage you to take a look at that after the first reading and then any questions. In between now and the next board meeting, he needs to go to on this one. Let us know. We can discuss it. If that sounds good, unless someone has questions now. All right. All right. First, I have 3 personnel items for this evening. First up is a transfer. Wes Rickers works over at Sophos and has for several years. He also does work with Current College Academy. Kelly is principal of both those locations. As part of the Youth Build grant, there's monies in there for case manager, Avenue College Career Connection, and Kelly would like to transfer Wes over to Current College Academy. In addition to, it's really covering a hodgepodge of a bunch of different duties, including going to get his license to be a driver's ed instructor. She has monies available to provide driver's ed lessons for the students need there as part of that grant to give them greater access to driving. So Russ was willing to do that. Russ is sold. Eli Timish we did an exhaustive process on the buildings and grounds search, and Eli was selected to serve as our next buildings and grounds supervisor. He was unable to come tonight, wanted to be able to meet the board, but he'll be replacing Mike Gadsden. He'll start July 1 and they'll have some overlap time. He is from the Lake Geneva area. Originally, they live close by, and has a young family of 6.
What's his background?
He is currently the IT and Buildings and Grounds Director for a charter school, one of the private charters in Milwaukee, with about 1,300 students. So very highly skilled about the IT side, also the buildings and grounds. I would say he's probably not where Mike was, but Mike's been in that field for 30 years. But he has a background in both of those segments and areas, and is working on his master's degree in facility management. Having that
So he'll be bringing kids to the school.
But he said 6 of them. So
Wow.
They're young. The sixth is on the way. He has.
Wow.
I think the oldest is just in.
Oh my.
Bless his life for my kids. So, and then, yeah, and I know his parents. They live in the school district just north of town. His father's administrator of the charter systems of Oklahoma. Oh, you'll appreciate. He was the team captain 2 years in a row for the high school.
Oh, really?
So,
Oh, interesting.
all right, at least that's what he had on his resume. I did not verify that. Nolan Shark has been appointed as the high school golf assistant. That's all I got for the personnel.
I move to approve the personal recommendation.
Oh, I forgot to mention Eli is also trilingual, Portuguese, Spanish.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he served a church mission.
Wow.
All right, for gifts, we've got a number of gifts tonight. Put back in my page, I'll be able to tell you what they are. Donna Neship donated 2 benches for the high school tennis courts, valued at $1,600. The Gibbons PTA donated $5,417.74 to the art department for the art auction event. And the Jackson PTA donated an iPad to the art department valued at $200.
Second.
Second.
So moved and second executed in those space of non-initiative, that's its PTA and Jackson PTA. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Second reading of the.
Did not receive any further feedback or input regarding the books or the written sections of the new one.
Second to revise plans for step. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I know that.
Yeah.
I could look at it either.
I assume they didn't want us to open it outside of,
Right.
because it's being.
That's exactly why we're doing
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
It is public once it's passed.
Is it good enough?
Well, I was able to share it with you.
All right. There we go. Okay.
And that should open it. There you go.
All right. So based off of the approval or the proposal that was shared at the last board meeting in closed session, this reflects the salaries that were proposed for each instructional staff member in the school district, including the percent increase on the schedule in addition to the flat dollar amount to recognize the lane movement, the steps on the roads, and including the creation of the additional roads at the bottom of the schedule for those that were at the top.
I think the link is now active.
I can open it up.
Yeah, I was. I moved to 2021 teacher contract assessment.
Mrs. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Gayhart? Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mr. Martell?
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mrs. Ray? Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Ms. Krakowski? All right, our next meeting will start at the middle school at 5 o'clock. We'll hold the retirement recognition. It could potentially be a large group because we're also inviting those who didn't get to come due to COVID. So I encourage everyone to be in attendance there. The high school was recently recognized as U.S. News Top High School in the Whitewater metro area. I didn't know such a thing existed. We were the top. But it's also the first time in my knowledge, at least since I've been here and been tracking it, that we are the top-rated high school in the conference and the region. We passed Waterford and Williams Bay, slightly above us in this ranking. Just as an FYI, that I was selected to serve on the Gateway Technical College as a Gateway Technical College trustee. It's more meetings for myself, but I've also already found them to be beneficial to establish that networking, learning more, and it's also even open a path that we're going to work with them on professional development for our staff in the year as a result of something some training I went that we think is great for our staff in regards to how to respond to and how to address when racist, bigoted, off-color remarks are made about other students and training them how to handle it and how to react to it. It's harder than you would think.
Yeah.
I think we've all probably been exposed to that. It's like, that off-color joke, should I say something? Should I not? How do I handle it?
Yeah.
So that was something we found was needed. So I'm excited about that. I also wanted to mention, I hope it's going to steal some thunder from the next student report, but we did our high school Rocket League team won the state championship. And then in baseball last Friday, we had a no-hitter thrown.
Yes.
Next day in softball, we had no-hitter thrown in softball.
Nice.
In fact, in the 2 games on last Saturday, the girls softball team only gave up 1 hit.
Yeah.
That's all I have, other than we do have a closed session to review supervisor and admin contracts.
I move to adjourn to closed session pursuant to the Texas statute 19.8.541 consider 2021-23 wage salary adjustments for supervisors, central office support staff, and administrators. the board will not reconvene in open session.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 5.1C. Consider 21-22 wage salary adjustments for supervisors, central office staff, and administrators. School board will not reconvene in open session. Roll call vote.
Mrs. Fisher,
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart,
Yes.
Mrs. Ingersoll,
Yes.
Mr. Martell,
Yes.
Mr. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Mrs. Ray,
Yes.
Mr. Sparrow,
Yes.
Mr. Kowski.